The Karakoram mountains rose like jagged blades, their peaks cutting into the heavens. The glaciers stretched endlessly, a white desert of deathly silence. Winds howled like ancient spirits, carrying stories too old for memory. But hidden in these frozen labyrinths was a whisper, not the whisper of storms, not the whisper of avalanches, a darker sound, the whisper of a beast made not of flesh, but of iron. For centuries, villagers in the valleys below spoke of it. They said the beast's chest was hollow, and inside it swirled shadows that fed on human souls. Some called it punishment from forgotten gods. Others called it a weapon, forged by a tribe long vanished. But most dismissed it as a tale to scare children on winter nights. Most, but not all, at the edge of the valley, near a frozen river, lived a man named Shona. He was old, his back bent, his eyes cloudy like mist. The villagers called him the last Requale, the final guardian of a duty no one remembered. His hut was filled with relics, rusted charms, cracked masks, scrolls of symbols that no one could read. And across his chest ran scars, long, jagged, and faintly silver in the moonlight. He claimed those scars came from the iron beast itself. The young laughed at him. The elders shook their heads, but Shona remained, watching, waiting, until the night the glacier cracked. It began with a roar, not thunder, not avalanche, but something deeper. The mountains trembled, and the ice split open like a wound. Hunters never returned from the high passes. Herds were found frozen solid, eyes wide, as if death had arrived in a single breath. And in the winds, faint but certain, came a sound, clang, 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 the sound of something vast moving through iron chains. In the valley, panic spread. Families barred their homes. Mothers whispered prayers to gods they no longer worshipped. And at the center of it all stood Azeem, a young warrior, his hand always resting on the hilt of his curved blade. Azeem was no stranger to loss. His father, a hunter, had vanished years ago into the very glaciers that were now stirring. Only his spear had been found, snapped in half, frozen in bloodless ice. Since then, Azeem had trained harder than any man in the village. He fought the mountain itself, climbing where others feared, wrestling storms, refusing to yield. Yet no battle had ever answered the question that haunted him. What killed my father? So when the whispers returned, Azeem did not laugh. He listened. He sought out Shona. Inside the guardian's hut, the fire burned low. Shadows danced across the walls, where symbols carved into stones seemed to shift as if alive. Shona sat by the fire, his hands trembling as he held an old chain blackened, heavy, engraved with sigils that pulsed faintly. "You hear it too," Shona rasped as Azeem entered, the iron stirring, the beast's hunger waking. Azeem's jaw clenched. "Tell me what it is." Shona's cloudy eyes locked onto his. "A prison. Long ago, before your people, before your gods, there was a tribe here. They were smiths, masters of metal. They forged a beast of iron, a guardian of their temples. But the beast, it betrayed them. It drank not blood, but souls. It turned on its masters. They could not kill it. So they sealed it, deep within the glaciers, bound by chains forged in sacred fire. And now," Azeem asked. Shona held up the chain in his hands. It shuddered as if alive. A crack ran through it, glowing faintly red. "The seal is breaking. The beast stirs. It will not stop. Every soul it drinks makes it stronger. Soon it will walk again, Azeem's grip tightened on his blade. "Then tell me how to kill it." A silence hung heavy. Then Shana leaned close, his voice a whisper. "You cannot kill the iron beast. You can only chain it. But to wield the seal again, you must pass through the temples hidden inside the glacier. Trials left by the ancients. If you survive, the chains will answer to you. If you fail, the glacier will swallow you." The hut trembled as a wind howled through the cracks. Azeem stood tall, his eyes burning with the fire of his father's memory. "Then show me the path." Shana studied him as though searching for weakness. At last he nodded. "Come at dawn. The ice will open for you. But know this, once you enter, you may never return." That night, Azeem walked the silent valley. Above him, the glaciers glowed under the moonlight like the bones of ancient giants. The wind carried faint echoes, the clang of chains, the groan of something vast shifting in the deep. He thought of his father, of his mother's tears, of the villagers hiding in fear, and he swore that if the iron beast walked again, it would not be unchecked. He returned to his hut, sharpening his blade until it gleamed. He strapped on the furs of his father, worn and heavy with age. Around his neck, he tied a simple charm his mother had given him, a carved stone in the shape of a flame. It was said to ward off darkness. Sleep came in fragments, filled with dreams of red eyes in the ice, of footsteps that shook the earth, of chains snapping one by one at dawn. Shana awaited him. Together they climbed into the mountains, the cold biting like knives. The air grew thin, the world silent except for the crunch of their boots. Higher and higher they went, until the valley was a memory below. At last they reached a crevasse, vast, bottomless, a wound in the glacier. From its depths came a faint glow, pale and haunting. "This is where they sealed it," Shana whispered. "The entrance to the temples lies below." He pressed the broken chain into Azeem's hand. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "This will guide you. It will burn in the presence of the beast. Remember, you do not fight it for victory. You fight it to chain it again." Azeem looked into the abyss, the wind howling from its depths like the breath of some monstrous thing. His heart pounded, but his grip was steady. He turned once more to Shana. "If I return," he said, "I will carry your burden with me. The village will remember your duty." The old guardian smiled faintly, tears glimmering in his eyes. "Go, warrior. The mountain awaits." And with that, Azeem descended into the ice. The darkness swallowed him. The whispers grew louder. And in the deep, a sound echoed like the beating of a monstrous heart. Clang, clang, clang. The iron beast was waking. The descent into the glacier felt endless. Azeem's breath turned to mist with every exhale, and the echo of his footsteps followed him like a ghost. The broken chain Shana had given him pulsed faintly in his hand, its glow illuminating jagged walls of ice that glimmered like glass. The deeper he went, the more the silence pressed against him. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something watching. He tightened his grip on his blade. The path twisted, narrow and sharp. Sometimes he crawled through cracks, the ice pressing against his chest. Sometimes the ground dropped steeply, forcing him to slide down slopes where his reflection stared back at him in frozen walls. With each step, the whispers grew louder, faint metallic sounds, as though chains were dragging across the deep. Then the path opened. Before him stood a vast chamber carved into the heart of the glacier. The ceiling soared high, icicles hanging like spears. In the center rose a temple of frozen stone, half buried in ice. Its walls were carved with symbols, spirals of flame and chains etched deep into rock. Faint blue light pulsed within the carvings, as if the temple itself breathed. The chain in Azeem's hand grew hot. He stepped closer. His boots crunched against the frost-covered floor, and his reflection glared back at him from the ice. A massive doorway loomed ahead, framed by ancient statues, warriors of stone, their faces weathered, their hands clutching broken spears. Their eyes seemed to follow him. Azeem's heart pounded, but he did not hesitate. He placed his palm against the frozen gate. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep rumble shook the chamber, and the doorway cracked open, releasing a burst of cold air that smelled faintly of ash and iron. Inside, shadows moved. The first temple was a labyrinth of frozen corridors. Torches of blue flame lit themselves as Azeem entered, their light flickering against walls lined with runes. Every step echoed like thunder, though the silence remained thick, oppressive. He could feel it, the presence of something waiting at the heart of the temple. The floor opened into a circular arena. Runes spiraled across the ground, glowing faintly as he stepped onto them. The air grew heavy, humming with power, and then the Guardian awoke from the ice above. A figure descended, suspended by chains that snapped free with a scream of metal. It landed with a crash, the ground trembling beneath its weight. It was not flesh. It was not entirely stone. The Guardian was spectral, a giant figure draped in armor of frost and shadow, its face hidden behind a mask of ice. Its eyes glowed with cold fire. In its hands, it carried a halberd taller than Azeem, its blade shimmering like frozen glass. The Guardian's voice boomed through the chamber, echoing in a tongue older than men. The words were lost to time, but their meaning burned into Azeem's chest. Prove yourself, or be consumed. The Guardian lunged. The halberd swung in a wide arc, slicing the air with a sound like tearing ice. Azeem barely rolled aside, the blade crashing into the ground where he had stood. Shards of frost exploded outward, slicing his cheek. He gritted his teeth, raising his sword. He had fought men, wolves, even bears, but this was something else. This was not a creature of flesh. This was a trial forged by the ancients. He attacked, his blade flashing in the blue firelight. Sparks burst as steel met ice. The Guardian barely staggered. With inhuman speed, it spun, its halberd slamming into Azeem's chest and throwing him across the arena. He hit the frozen wall, the breath knocked from him. Pain seared through his ribs, but he forced himself up. The chain in his hand pulsed violently, almost burning. He looked down. Its glow was not random. It flickered in rhythm with the runes on the floor. Azeem understood this was not a fight of strength. It was a fight of will. The temple wanted proof of his spirit, not just his blade. He steadied his breath and focused. As the Guardian charged again, he moved not with rage but with clarity. He dodged its halberd, stepping onto one of the glowing runes. The ground flared, sending a pulse of light through the arena. The Guardian reeled back, its mask cracking slightly. Azeem's eyes narrowed. The runes weakened it. The battle became a dance. He weaved between strikes, each movement closer to death. The halberd sliced inches from his head, shattered stone near his feet. But Azeem endured. Each time he landed on a rune, the Guardian howled, its body splitting with cracks of light. But the Guardian was relentless. A final swing came faster than lightning, and Azeem was too slow. The halberd slammed into his shoulder, sending him to his knees. Blood stained the ice. The guardian raised its weapon high for the finishing blow, and then Azeem remembered his mother's charm. The carved stone flame round his neck glowed faintly. With the last of his strength, he pressed it to the chain in his hand. Fire burst from the sigils, blazing across the runes of the arena. The guardian froze mid-strike, its body split with cracks of light, its mask shattering to reveal only emptiness beneath. With a scream that shook the temple, it crumbled into shards of ice and shadow, which dissolved into mist. The arena fell silent. The runes glowed brighter, converging into a single symbol in the center of the floor, a chain wrapped around a hollow chest. The seal of the ancients, Azeem, staggered forward, pressing the broken chain Shona had given him against the symbol. The floor pulsed, the chain fusing with new strength. It was no longer broken. It gleamed with power, its links unbreakable. The temple spoke, not in words, but in presence. You have passed the first trial. Azeem collapsed to his knees, his breath ragged, his shoulder burning with pain, but he smiled faintly. He had survived. He had earned the chain's power. As he rose, the temple doors ahead groaned open, revealing another dark passage leading deeper into the glacier. The whispers grew louder, closer now, like the breath of something massive stirring in the dark. He wiped the blood from his face, tightened his grip on the reforged chain, and stepped forward. The first trial was over, but the iron beast was waiting. The path beyond the first temple narrowed into darkness. Azeem's torch flickered weakly, its flame bending as though resisting the air itself. The glacier seemed alive now, groaning, cracking, whispering. His boots echoed on the frozen floor, the sound swallowed instantly, as if the ice drank it. The reforged chain wrapped around his forearm pulsed faintly, a heartbeat not his own. Each glow pulled him forward, deeper into the labyrinth, but soon the corridor split into many. Each passage looked the same, walls of glassy ice, runes carved faintly, shadows flickering. He stepped into one, then another, only to find himself back where he began. The paths twisted endlessly, a maze forged not by men but by something far older. Frustration gnawed at him. He slammed his blade into the wall. The ice cracked but revealed nothing. He steadied his breath. This is a trial, not a trap. Then he heard it. His father's voice, Azeem. The sound froze his blood. It came faintly, as though through layers of stone. He turned, searching the shadows. "Father," he whispered, and there, in the reflection of the ice, he saw him. His father, tall, wrapped in furs, carrying the old hunting spear. His eyes glowed faintly, not with warmth, but with something hollow. "Follow me," the reflection said. Azeem, single quotes, as grip tightened on his blade. He knew his father was gone. He had seen the broken spear, stained with frozen blood. Yet his heart ached. Against his will, he stepped closer to the reflection. The corridor shifted. Walls melted into new shapes, runes flaring. The reflection walked ahead, and Azeem followed. The temple of chains revealed itself. It was vast, a cavern so high that its ceiling was lost in shadow. Chains hung down from above, hundreds of them, swaying without wind. Each chain glowed faintly, inscriptions etched into their links. They sang a metallic chorus, clanging softly as though whispering secrets. At the center stood a stone dais, surrounded by spirals of runes. Upon it, A figure knelt in chains, human in form, but faceless, its body flickering between flesh and shadow. Its arms were bound, its chest hollow, glowing faintly with crimson light. The voice of his father came again, but this time from the bound figure. "Free me, son, free me, and I will show you the way." Azeem's breath quickened. His hand shook. Every part of him wanted to believe, but the chain wrapped around his arm burned hot. Warning him, "This is not my father," Azeem whispered to himself. The faceless figure rose slowly, the chains rattling as it moved. Its hollow chest pulsed like a heartbeat, glowing brighter. The voice shifted, now his mother's, soft and trembling. "Azeem, please, help me." Pain tore through his heart. He gritted his teeth, shaking his head. "You are not her either." The figure tilted its head. The voices twisted, becoming dozens, hundreds, villagers, children, hunters, all calling his name. The chains rattled louder, clanging in rhythm with the whispers. Then the figure snapped its chains. It grew tall, towering over Azeem. Its hollow chest blazed red, shadows spilling from within like smoke. The chains that had bound it now lashed outward, alive, striking like serpents. Azeem rolled aside as one chain slammed into the ground, cracking stone. He swung his blade, sparks flying as steel met iron. But the chains recoiled, striking again and again. One wrapped around his leg, dragging him toward the creature. He shouted, plunging his sword into the ground, anchoring himself. The chain burned against his skin, searing. His mother's voice screamed in his ear. His father's voice cursed him. Shadows pressed at his mind, whispering lies. "You are weak. You are alone. You will fail." The world blurred. He saw visions, his village burning, his father's corpse, his own face twisted with failure. His grip faltered. Then the chain on his arm, the true chain, pulsed violently. Heat surged through him, burning away the whispers. The illusions flickered. He roared, pulling the enemy chain toward him, yanking the faceless creature off balance. With a surge of strength, he leaped forward, his blade flashing. He slashed across its hollow chest. Light exploded. The creature shrieked, its voices collapsing into one, a sound of pure agony. Chains whipped wildly, striking the air. Azeem pressed forward, his sword cutting again and again, each strike carving through shadow. Finally, with a cry, he wrapped his own chain around the creature's chest. The sigils on his chain glowed, burning into its hollow heart. The creature convulsed, shadows tearing from its body, before collapsing into dust and silence. The chains above stopped swaying. The cavern fell still. Azeem staggered, his chest heaving, sweat freezing on his skin. The runes spiraled outward, glowing brighter until they converged beneath his feet. The ground shook, and a new chain rose from the stone, thicker, heavier, etched with symbols that pulsed with power. He took it, feeling its weight settle into his arm. The second piece of the seal, the temple's presence filled his mind again. "You have broken the chains of illusion. Your spirit is unyielding." The dais cracked open, revealing a stairway spiraling deeper into the glacier. From below came a sound that made his blood run cold, a roar, distant yet vast, echoing through the ice. It was not the Guardian. It was not illusion. It was the Iron Beast itself. Stirring Dot, Azeem, stood at the edge of the stairway, his body bruised, his soul battered by visions. Yet his eyes burned with fire. He had survived 2 trials. He carried 2 chains, but the beast was waking. And the deeper he went, the thinner the line between life and death. With a steady breath, he tightened his grip on his blade, let the chain coil around his arm, and stepped into the darkness below. The temple of shadows awaited. The stairway coiled like a serpent, plunging deeper into the glacier. Each step Azeem took groaned under his boots, as though the ice itself resisted him. The walls glimmered faintly with dark light, reflecting not just his face, but something else. Each time he looked, the reflection shifted. Sometimes older, scarred, sometimes broken, lifeless, sometimes a stranger with his eyes. He forced himself to look away. He had endured 2 trials. He would endure this one. But the deeper he went, the heavier the air grew. The torch in his hand sputtered, flames shrinking as if afraid. His chain glowed faintly, the sigils pulsing slower than before, almost as though warning him. Finally, the stairway ended. The chamber opened into a vast cavern, swallowed in shadow. Unlike the temples before, this one had no carvings, no statues, no runes. Only darkness. The air was thick, suffocating, filled with whispers that crawled under his skin. Azeem raised his torch. The light stretched weakly, barely touching the walls. But in the distance, he saw movement, something vast, slithering just beyond the reach of flame. The whispers grew louder. They weren't words. They were memories. His memories. You weren't strong enough to save your father. You left your mother to grieve alone. You think you were chosen. You are nothing. Azeem's hand trembled. His heart pounded. He tightened his grip on his sword, shouting into the dark, "Show yourself." And the shadows obeyed. From the darkness stepped. Himself a perfect reflection, same face, same blade, same chain coiled around his arm. But its eyes were black voids, its smile cruel. The shadows spoke in his voice, but twisted. You fight for them. The villagers who mock you, the guardian who uses you, the father who abandoned you to die. Azeem's jaw clenched. You are nothing but a trick. The shadow laughed. I am the truth. The beast is not your enemy. You are. Before he could respond, the shadow lunged. Steel clashed against steel. Sparks exploded in the darkness. The shadow fought with his every movement, swift, precise, merciless. Every strike was one he himself had trained 1,000 times. Every parry was his own technique turned against him. It was like fighting a mirror that knew his thoughts before he acted. The battle raged across the cavern. Their blades sang, their boots cracked the frozen ground. Azeem struck high, the shadow blocked. He feinted, left the shadow fainted too. Their chains lashed outward at the same moment, striking and recoiling in unison. Frustration surged. Sweat froze on his skin. His shoulder burned from his earlier wound. He was being undone not by a monster, but by himself. Then the whispers struck again. Visions filled his eyes, his father's broken spear, his mother's tears, villagers turning away, laughing. His blade slowed. Doubt sank its claws into him. The shadow's smile widened. You see, you are weak. The beast will consume you. You deserve it. It raised its blade high, but then a memory cut through the darkness. His father's voice, not twisted, but true. The night before he vanished into the glacier, when Azeem was just a boy. He had placed his hand on Azeem's shoulder and said, "Strength is not in the blade. It is in refusing to bow." No matter how heavy the chain, the words ignited something inside him. The chain on his arm flared with blinding light, burning against his skin. The whispers shrieked, recoiling. The shadow staggered, its black eyes narrowing. Azeem roared, charging forward. This time, he did not fight with technique. He fought with will. He let the chain guide him, its light striking where the shadow's darkness was weakest. Their blades clashed again, but now the shadow faltered. Azeem's strikes grew heavier, burning through doubt. Each blow shattered an illusion, villagers turning away, his mother's grief, his father's absence, until they cracked like glass with a final cry. He wrapped his chain around the shadow's chest. The sigils seared into it, burning away its hollow form. The shadow screamed, his scream twisted in agony, before shattering into shards of black mist that dissolved into the air. Silence fell. The cavern's darkness lifted, revealing walls covered in runes hidden until now. They pulsed with light, glowing brighter with each heartbeat. At the center of the chamber, a pedestal rose, bearing another chain, finer, sharper, shimmering like silver fire. Azeem staggered forward, his breath ragged, his body trembling. He reached out, and the chain wrapped itself around his other arm, fusing with the first. Together they pulsed, their light filling the chamber, their weight strangely comforting. The temple's voice filled his mind. You have conquered your shadow. You are whole. The ground trembled. Far below, deeper in the glacier, a roar thundered, deafening, monstrous, filled with rage. The ice cracked above his head, flakes falling like snow. The iron beast was closer now, awake. Azeem lifted his head, his eyes burning. He had survived 3 trials. He had broken illusions, shattered shadows, and bound chains to his will. But the true battle was coming. He turned to the stairway revealed at the far end of the chamber, spiraling downward into a lightless abyss. The whispers returned, but softer now, almost respectful. He gripped his sword. His voice was steady. I am ready. And with that, he stepped into the abyss toward the final trial, and the beast itself. The abyss swallowed Azeem whole. The stairway beneath his boots spiraled downward endlessly, carved of stone so old it felt more like bone than rock. The air was heavy with ash and frost, each breath cutting his lungs. His chains glowed faintly, not with triumph this time, but with warning. Far below, a pulse echoed, deep, thunderous, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Boom, the walls shook. Boom, a crack split the staircase. The iron beast was awake, at last. The stairway ended in a vast cavern carved entirely of black ice. Stalactites dripped like frozen daggers. The ceiling loomed so high that Azeem could barely see it, even with the glow of his chains. In the center of the chamber lay a massive altar of stone and iron, covered in runes that had nearly faded with age. And on that altar, the beast it was, no animal, no demon of flesh. The creature's body was forged of black iron, fused with glacier crystal, its limbs jointed like a machine, yet alive with muscle and sinew that pulsed between the plates. Its head was a mask of jagged steel, carved into a grimacing snarl, eyes shut as though in slumber. Around its chest wound a lattice of ancient chains, glowing faintly blue, the last remnants of the seal forged by the forgotten tribe. But already cracks split those chains. Smoke hissed from them, curling like black fire. The beast stirred. One massive hand twitched, claws scraping against stone. The sound was a scream of metal on metal, echoing across the cavern like thunder. Azeem froze, his breath stolen from his chest. This was no vision, no shadow, no illusion. This was death made flesh and iron. The ground trembled. The beast's eyes, opened twin furnaces of molten fire, glared at him, burning with hunger and fury. The cavern itself seemed to recoil, walls groaning as the creature slowly rose. It was colossal, twice the height of any man, broad as the temple pillars. Each movement unleashed a storm of sparks and ice, the weight of its body threatening to collapse the chamber. When it spoke, its voice was not a sound, but a quake inside his skull. I remember you. Not you, but your blood. The ones who chained me. Thieves of soul and flame. I have slept, but no longer. Azeem raised his blade, the chains on his arms flaring bright in defiance. You will not leave this place. The beast tilted its head, molten fire dripping from its jaws. You are small. You are nothing, yet you carry their mark. Very well, I will break you first. Then I will drink the world. It lunged. The cavern exploded into chaos. Azeem dove aside as the beast's claws smashed into the altar, shattering stone like glass. Shards flew in every direction, some slicing across his cheek. The impact shook the ground, nearly throwing him off his feet. He rolled, chains flashing, striking outward. They lashed against the beast's arm, searing into its iron flesh. Sparks hissed where they struck, and the monster roared, molten blood spattering the floor. But the chains did not hold. With one violent motion, the beast ripped free, snapping the glowing links like twigs. Azeem staggered back, his chest heaving. These were no longer trials. This was war. The battle raged across the cavern. The beast swung its colossal arm, claws tearing trenches through the ice. Azeem ducked beneath the strike, darting between its legs. His blade cut deep into a joint. Sparks burst, the stench of burning metal filling the air. The beast howled, lashing back with a kick that sent him sprawling across the ground. He hit hard, the air torn from his lungs. Blood filled his mouth, but he forced himself up, wiping it away. The beast loomed over him, eyes blazing. Its jaws opened, and a torrent of black flame roared outward. The cavern lit up with searing fire, the ice walls hissing, melting into rivers. Azeem raised his chains, crossing them before him. The sigils flared, forming a shield of light. The flames struck, engulfing him. For a heartbeat, he thought he would burn alive. But the chains held. The fire split around him, scorching the ground, but leaving him standing in a storm of ash and smoke. When the flames cleared, Azeem's eyes burned with defiance. He struck back. The chains whipped outward, wrapping around the beast's arm. He pulled with every ounce of his strength. The sigils glowed brighter, fueled by his fury, his will. The beast snarled, dragged down to one knee. Azeem charged, his sword a streak of silver. He leaped, driving the blade into the beast's chest where the chains of the old seal still clung. His strike sank deep, metal screeching, sparks flying. The beast roared, a sound that shattered stone and bone alike. Its claws slashed across his side, tearing flesh. Pain exploded, but Azeem held on, driving the blade deeper. The old seal glowed, reacting to the new chains on his arms. For a moment, just a moment, the beast faltered. Its furnace eyes dimmed, its body trembling as though bound again. But then the cracks spread wider. The ancient chains shattered completely. Falling in pieces to the ground, the beast was free. The cavern shook violently, chunks of ice crashing from above. Rivers of molten fire spread across the floor as the creature rose to its full height, unbound, unstoppable. It spread its arms wide, its voice shaking the mountain. No more sleep, no more chains. The world will drown in my hunger. Azeem stumbled back, blood pouring from his wounds, his blade slick with fire. His chains flickered weakly, their light dimming from exhaustion. He had failed to contain it, but he was not done. Not yet. He tightened his grip, lifted his sword, and whispered through clenched teeth, "This ends with me." The beast's roar thundered like an avalanche, and they charged one another, man and monster, as the cavern collapsed around them. The cavern was collapsing. Ice and stone rained down in avalanches, the roar of destruction drowning out even the beast's fury. But Azeem heard it, the pounding, earth-shaking steps of the iron beast as it advanced, each stride shattering the floor beneath. His chains flickered weakly. His blade trembled in his hand. Blood soaked his tunic, dripping into the frost at his feet, but his eyes burned with fire. This is the last stand. The beast rose higher than ever, unshackled and terrible. Black flames seethed from its jaws, licking the cavern walls, carving rivers of molten ice. Its voice was thunder made flesh. "You are but dust, warrior. I am hunger eternal. My chains are broken. Who will stop me now?" Azeem raised his blade, its edge cracked but still gleaming faintly in the firelight. "I will," the monster laughed, the sound like the grinding of millstones echoing across the collapsing temple. "Then come, little shadow. Break yourself upon me." The battle erupted. The beast lunged with impossible speed, its claw a storm of jagged steel. Azeem ducked under the strike, chains snapping outward, glowing faintly. They lashed around the monster's leg, slowing its charge. He darted forward, slashing deep into the joint. Sparks burst. The beast howled, tearing free. Its arms swung like a hammer, crashing into the ground where Azeem had stood a breath before. Ice shattered. He rolled, springing up, chains whipping again. This time they coiled around the beast's arm. He pulled with all his strength, dragging it down, his muscles screaming. The creature's molten eyes flared. With a violent jerk, it yanked him off his feet, hurling him across the cavern. He slammed into a pillar of ice, coughing blood, vision swimming, but the chains did not break. They stretched across the chamber, still wrapped around the monster's arm. Glowing brighter now, Azeem staggered to his feet, pulling harder. His body a furnace of pain and determination. The chains answered. For the first time, he felt them burn with him, not as a burden, not as ancient relics, but as extensions of his very soul. They shimmered with light, brighter than ever before, each sigil alive, each link forged by his will. The beast snarled, straining against them. "No chain can bind me." "Then feel the chain of a man's spirit," Azeem growled. He pulled and the beast staggered. But the monster was far from defeated. Its chest split open, metal plates tearing apart, revealing a hollow furnace inside. A pit of swirling darkness and fire. From it came the sound of countless voices, screams of souls devoured, echoing in endless torment. The beast bent forward, opening its chest wider. The void within began to pull, dragging everything toward it. Loose stones, shards of ice, even rivers of molten water were sucked into the furnace. Azeem felt his body lift, his chains straining, his strength slipping. The void was dragging him in. The screams filled his ears, Thousands of voices, begging, weeping, shrieking. He clenched his teeth, his hands bleeding on the chain links. "No," he roared. "You will not take me." Summoning the last of his strength, he plunged his blade into the ice beneath his feet, anchoring himself. The chains tightened, glowing like stars. The beast roared, fury and hunger raging, pulling harder. The cavern shook as the void widened, tearing apart the floor, and then Azeem saw them. In the void, through the swirling fire, faces appeared. Familiar faces. His father, his fallen kin, warriors of the old tribes, all staring back at him, their voices calling not in pain, but in unity. "You are the last of us. Hold fast. Seal it." His chest burned, his spirit igniting like a sun. The chains flared blinding white, surging with power not his alone, but of every soul that had fallen to the beast. Their strength was his. Their will was his. The links became unbreakable. The beast howled in shock. "No, impossible." Azeem roared, pulling the chains with fury beyond mortal limits. The links wrapped tighter, coiling around the beast's arms, its legs, its chest. The void struggled, shrieked, screamed, but the furnace dimmed under the light. With a final heave, he dragged the chains across its chest, sealing the furnace shut. The sigils carved themselves into the iron, glowing brighter and brighter, until the cavern itself was bathed in white fire. The beast thrashed, clawing, tearing at the bindings, but every time it struck, the chains only tightened. Forged anew by the will of the fallen, Azeem staggered forward. Raising his blade one last time, he whispered, voice raw, back to sleep, with all his strength. He plunged the sword into the center of the seal. The explosion was blinding. The cavern collapsed entirely. Fire, ice, and stone crashed down in storms. The roar of the beast became a howl of defeat, fading into silence as the chains consumed it, dragging it down into the mountain's heart. When the light cleared, the iron beast was gone. All that remained was silence and Azeem, kneeling in the ruins, his blade broken, the chains burned into his flesh forever. He could barely breathe. Blood dripped from his lips, but he stood, staring into the darkness where the beast had been. It was over. The world above would never know what happened here. They would never know how close the iron beast had come to devouring them all. But the whispers would return someday. And when they did, the chains would remember his sacrifice. For now, the mountain was quiet. The last guardian had done his duty, and the iron beast of Karakoram slept once more. The silence of the mountain was absolute. No wind howled. No glacier cracked. The ruins of the cavern lay buried under tons of stone and ice, sealing the place forever. And at the heart of the ruins, Azeem lay still. His body was broken, battered by the fury of the iron beast, but his spirit endured. The chains no longer glowed with blinding fury. They pulsed faintly, like embers in ash, carved permanently into his flesh. His blade was gone, shattered in the final strike. He opened his eyes. Above him, through a crack in the glacier, he saw the night sky clear, endless, filled with stars that shimmered like silver fires. For a moment, the weight of centuries lifted, and he felt only peace. He staggered to his feet. Each step was agony, but he climbed out of the ruins, crawling onto the frozen ledge overlooking the Karakoram Valley. The moonlight bathed the mountains, endless peaks rising like giants around him. Azeem fell to his knees, breathing hard, and whispered, "It is done. But the silence answered him with a strange warmth. He looked down at his chains. The faint glow spread, soft and golden, as though thousands of hands had touched them. The whispers of the fallen returned, not screams this time, but a chorus, quiet, eternal, grateful. You are one of us now, guardian, silent keeper. Watcher of the seal. Azeem bowed his head, tears freezing against his cheeks. He was no longer just a man. He was bound to the beast forever, its jailer, its shield against the world. The last trial was not the battle, it was this, to carry the burden for the rest of his days. Years passed. The valley people spoke of strange sights on the high cliffs. A lone figure with burning chains, seen in the moonlight. Hunters swore they heard a faint ringing sound, like iron links dragging across stone, echoing through the glaciers. Children whispered of a guardian who roamed the ice at night, his eyes glowing faintly, his footsteps leaving no trail. They called him the silent guardian of Karakoram. Some said he was Azeem himself, returned from death. Others believed he was the spirit of all the old warriors, reborn in one body. None dared climb the mountain to find out, but all agreed on one thing. The glaciers were quieter now, the storms less violent. The avalanches no longer carried screams. One night, decades later, a wandering monk from the lowlands arrived in the valley. He was old, bent with age, but carried scrolls filled with ancient stories. He gathered the tribes around their fires and asked, "Tell me, what do you fear in these mountains?" The elders spoke of the iron beast, sealed long ago. They told of the glacier's roar, of lives lost, of whispers in the ice. The monk nodded. "Yes, I have heard of this beast in other lands. A demon of iron, a devourer of souls. But tell me, how did your people survive it?" The youngest elder spoke then. His voice was hushed, reverent, because a warrior rose. He was one of us, yet more than us. He bore the chains of the ancients. He fought in the caverns of ice. And though he bled, he bound the beast again. He became the guardian. The monk wrote these words into his scrolls. A guardian, yes. Every land has such myths. But here, perhaps, it is no myth at all. The story spread beyond the valley. Traders carried it across kingdoms. Pilgrims whispered it at mountain shrines. Scholars wrote it in the margins of forgotten books, and slowly the legend grew. Some painted the guardian as a man of flesh, others as a spirit clad in chains. Some said he still lived, roaming the glaciers, waiting for the day the beast stirred again. Others believed he had ascended to the stars, his chains now constellations above the Karakoram peaks. The truth remained buried in the ice, but Azeem was still there. Decades had passed, yet his body never withered. The chains bound him not just to the beast, but to the mountain itself. His hair had turned white, his face lined with scars, but his spirit burned as strong as ever. On the highest ridge, he stood alone, watching the valleys below. He never descended, never returned to the world of men. His voice grew silent, his steps light, until even he felt less like a man and more like a shadow of the ice. He was the last guardian, eternal, unyielding, forgotten by men but remembered by the mountain. And in the silence, deep beneath the glaciers, the iron beast slept once more. One final night. The stars flared brighter than ever. The chains on Azeem's arms glowed in answer, not with fury, but with peace. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since the battle, He felt warmth. He saw his father again, his kin, the fallen warriors, all standing together on a frozen plain, smiling, waiting. He smiled back. The chains dissolved into light. His body faded into snow, but the mountain still held his presence, and the beast still feared his name to this day. When storms gather over the Karakoram, travelers claim to hear faint chains rattling in the wind, a warning, a reminder that the iron beast still sleeps, and that a silent guardian still watches.